Sometimes we take things for granted. Family members, friends, the little things between all of the chaos of the grand plans we have. Sometimes with a series or game, we might fall in love with it but only scratch the surface, and only upon revisiting it, we can truly appreciate the things that resonated with us. I saw the Soul Eater anime for the first time years ago, before I even knew what manga really was, and even the manga a few years ago. Both times I fell in love with the style of Soul Eater. Zany mixed with a gothic aesthetic that feels like Jet Set Radio made a Halloween spin-off. A sharp art style with smooth animation that allows for the characters to be iconic, and their expressions memorable, and fight scenes that hold up to this day. I will bet 20 years of my life that if you showed someone Soul Eater, there will be at least one character design that they love. Yeah, this right here, inject this into me, my veins, my bloodstream. While a lot of the credit should go to Studio C, a sector of the more well-known Studio Bones, for bringing Soul Eater to life, well, a chunk of it to life, it would be wrong on my behalf not to mention the mangaka Atsushi Okubo, bringing elements of his super recognizable style to then Fire Force, which, real quick, I remember seeing someone say that they loved Soul Eater, but couldn't get into Fire Force because of the fan service. Did we not watch the same fucking Soul Eater? Some authors, I would love to be a fly on the wall and watch them in their creative process. What music they would play, if the atmosphere in the room would be tense and heavy with madness, or the most infectious air of creativity and the fluctuations between the two. While making a judgment about a person based on limited knowledge is reckless, this quote from Okubo as to why he became a mangaka makes me believe he is the ultimate vibe. An interviewer asked, "What was the crucial reason for you to become a mangaka?" Pretty standard and valid question. The way Okubo responds is, "I have troubles getting up in the morning. That's why I wanted a job where I could freely arrange my time." It's the simple things, you know? But if there is a word to describe all of Okubo's style, it's bold. It's easy to look at it and tell that in every aspect of the series, from the characters to the sun and the moon in the sky breathing and laughing, the artist is being themselves, and is fearlessly expressing their vision and style through their work. The way I ended the other video about Soul Eater, we can attribute it to a soul. I will never get over this aspect of the series, but sadly, I think my discussions in the past have started and stopped with this aspect of a piece of art that has so much more to offer. Even in my recent video about it, it was a rant about how more series would benefit from having a unique style. The issue is that video wasn't really about Soul Eater, and even if it had been, focusing solely on the aesthetic is leaving out the rest that made it such a great experience, not just for the first time, but something to revisit again and again. You want to know if you can get along with a person? Ask them if they've watched Soul Eater. I'm serious, it doesn't matter what differences, big or small, you may have. I'm pretty certain if you both like Soul Eater, deep down, some form of harmony exists. Especially if you both read the manga. The reason I say that is while the anime, for as much as I love it to death, pun intended, boo me now, it ended super prematurely, being a rushed anime original ending that completely leaves out the best moments of character growth for the primary characters, ultimately falling short and being a disappointing end to an anime that captured the hearts of those who saw it. If you watched any of these videos, you will know that the recurring theme applies here. Anime caught up to the manga, and so either the next season takes years to come out, never comes out, or they decide to do an anime original ending. Go ahead, get your Soul Eater Brotherhood comment out of the way if you haven't left it already. So if you haven't read the Soul Eater manga, do yourself a favor, please. Overall, the story has its proper time in the manga to fully explore the theme of the story, seen throughout the different characters. For those of you that don't need a quick summary, feel free to skip ahead to the next section, but removing the cobwebs might be in order. We all love a good acronym. Not all acronyms, but the only one you really need to know is DWMA, Death Weapon Meister Academy, a school made by Death himself to maintain a level of order in the world, fight corrupt souls, witches, and prevent the creation of another Kishin. The anime left out a huge part of the Kishin's character, but more on that later. Soul Eater takes place in a world where humans can literally transform into weapons, like full-on scythes, swords, guns, and they're paired with Meisters, the people who wield them. The goal, on top of everything stated earlier, eventually turn your weapon partner into a death scythe, strong enough to be used by Lord Death himself, hence DWMA. Death himself, along with a few other characters, is a good example about how completely flipping one aspect of a trope can completely make them stand out. Seriously, I can't tell you how much I love this goofy bastard. The primary enemies in the series being Medusa and her child, a witch that wishes to spread madness while experimenting on said child, and then the Kishin himself, Terror incarnate. Also Lady Arachne, but that's later. But as much as I've screamed about the style and vibes of the absolute dopeness of the series, that's not why Soul Eater stuck with me. That's just what got me in the door. What kept me there, and what keeps pulling me back, is the actual story. Like, yeah, on paper, it sounds wild. A school run by death, students turning into weapons, their partners slicing up corrupted souls and witches, all while the sun and moon are laughing like maniacs in the sky. But once you settle into it, you realize, wait, this isn't just chaos for chaos's sake. There's actually something really grounded here. It's a story about identity, about growing up, and all that weird in-between space when you're trying to become stronger without losing yourself in the process. The first character worth talking about is Maka, the protagonist of Soul Eater, daughter of Spirit who is a death scythe, and also an unfaithful womanizer. Maka's mother is mentioned a decent bit in the series, but we never got to see her. It was until recently where I think official art was released for her design. Ultimately, there is an important contrast with Maka and her partner, and how her mother and father were. And that, along with the other things, makes Maka a really strong protagonist for the series of Soul Eater. In fact, the series doesn't really work if we were to put Black Star or one of the other characters that might have a stronger, more eccentric personality in her role. To understand why Maka works, we have to start with her flaws. It's interesting when you read a series online and see people get upset in comments that the character has a personality flaw that makes them hard to root for. Gee, it's almost like there's a flaw written with the intent for that character to eventually become aware of it, while already being aware of it learns to grow and change through trials and tribulations. I'm not saying that Maka is difficult to like as a character, by no means, but she does struggle with one major thing: the thought of being rejected. Maka is a kind person, and due to the failures of her father and wishing to surpass him, she feels the need to prove herself. Perhaps some form of feeling like if she is enough, then her partner won't do to her what her father did to her mother. I was hoping to have these clean segments for each character, but these two are inseparable when trying to talk about them, since their character arcs are directly linked. Maka and her weapon and partner, Soul Evans. While Maka is worried about being rejected and not being enough for Soul, Soul on the other hand has a similar problem that manifests itself in a different way. While Maka seems to be the type to need a form of validation through her own merits, giving it her all since she doesn't want to lose Soul, Soul doesn't give it his all, seemingly uncomfortable with himself and in a constant avoidance state. After, when Maka and Soul are affected by the black blood when fighting Crona, something that amplifies these internal issues, there's a quote that really captures Soul. Quote, "You're scared of playing for keeps. Isn't that right? You're scared of putting yourself out there and being judged. That's it, isn't it? That's how it's always been for you. You hold it in and endure, trying to hold back the black blood, trying to hold back the madness, all the while making the excuses, saying it's discipline. And everything you do, you always hold back. Even when you eat, it's never till you're full." End quote. For those that don't know from experience, this is a problematic dynamic, both unaware of what they are really worth and capable of. Maka and her ability to resonate and harmonize with others, and Soul not being aware that constantly holding himself back isn't just affecting Maka, but also himself. Still, their defects as individuals allows for them to understand and connect with a certain character that proves instrumental in the events that take place throughout the story. Wielder of the second most obnoxious sword in the series, Ragnarok, child of Medusa, and their blood is black. Crona. Crona never had a chance. From the jump, they were thrown into a world that didn't want them, raised by someone who only saw them as a tool, molded by punishment, and taught that love was something to earn through obedience. Medusa didn't just abandon Crona physically. She carved out any sense of safety they could have had, and replaced it with control. Isolation became normal, pain became routine, and eventually Crona stopped asking for anything else. That messes with you, when you're constantly told you're not good enough, that you're broken, that you're wrong just for existing. You start to believe it. You shut down, you avoid people. You flinch when kindness shows up because you assume there's a catch. And in Crona's case, it meant they couldn't even speak up for themselves without spiraling. They didn't know how to connect. They didn't know how to be. They were trapped in their own head, replaying the same scripts Medusa fed them over and over again. Killing that bunny and all of the other things she made Crona do. That hesitation, that silence, it wasn't weakness, it was survival. Crona didn't trust the world because the world taught them they weren't allowed to. This being the reality of the character is something both Maka and Soul can connect with. That feeling of not wanting to be rejected and hiding oneself because it is easier to not deal with people. Sadly, while Maka and Soul could grow, Crona, under Medusa, is doomed to spiral down the blackness of their own blood more and more. While some, like Crona and Soul, hide away as a form of self-preservation, others swing in the total opposite direction. Black Star talks loud, moves louder, and never shuts up about how great he is. But that's not ego, it's armor. He's the last of a dead clan, a legacy soaked in blood that everyone wishes didn't exist. The moment he steps into a room, people already made up their minds about him. Assassin, menace, problem. So, he gets ahead of it. He becomes bigger than their doubts, louder than their judgment. He turns every whisper into spotlight, because if he shines bright enough, people will stop looking at where he came from. But behind all of that noise is a kid carrying too much. He trains harder than anyone else, easily one of the best examples in anime of a hardworking character. He fights like every battle is personal, because it is. He's not just trying to win, he's trying to prove that his path doesn't have to end the same way as the ones before him. That power doesn't have to be corrupt. That he can be more than the blood in his veins. He wants to be strong, not for the sake of strength, but because that's the only way he knows how to protect the people who never gave up on him. And if he falls short, even for a second, he blames himself. He doesn't say it out loud, but you could see it in the way he trains the next day, and the next, and the next. And the way he never rests, and the way that he pushes and pushes and pushes, like slowing down would mean losing everything. But what if someone is already on the verge? There's no speculation because of their clan or fear of being judged or rejected, but if not a self-aware battle taking place. This is where I get to talk about my favorite character in the series, Stein. Stein's whole thing outside of having the coolest fucking introduction is control, or the attempt to control. That's the important thing there. The lab coat, the calm voice, the dissecting gaze. Pause, but it's all a performance. Because deep down, he knows exactly what he's capable of, and he's terrified that one day, he won't be able to stop it. He might be the smartest guy in the room, or well, he always is, and that's the problem. His mind doesn't shut off. It never rests. It spins, analyzes, picks things apart, people, morality, himself. He can understand how anything works down to the tiniest piece, but understanding something doesn't mean you know how to live with it. There's a madness inside of him that never really goes away. It lingers, sometimes quiet, sometimes laughs in his ear. He can feel it under his skin waiting for a moment of weakness, and that's why he obsesses over balance. Why he tries to keep things neat, orderly, and rational, because if he ever slips, just once, it all comes undone. That scalpel in his hand, it's not just for the battlefield or the lab, it's a reminder of the line he walks every day, of the version of himself he's trying to hold back, the one that doesn't think twice before cutting something open just to see how it ticks. Stein doesn't trust himself. That's what makes him dangerous, and that's what makes him tragic. His constant self-checking nature deprives him of knowing true love. He's the strongest student to ever graduate from the DWMA, and while he fights against the amplifying influence of the madness, he is also an example of someone who doesn't give in, for he knows the cost. I feel like The Art of Dying by Gojira, at least the opening verse on a Stein edit, would go so fucking hard. What if the control, the calculated demeanor, isn't a way to keep oneself in check, but the true self? OCD in the form of a person. What if for some reason they decided to shoot with their pinkies because it's swag as the fuck? Here we have my second favorite character, along with Crona, Death the Kid. Kid isn't chasing perfection. He's drowning himself in it. Every step, every shot, every breath, measured, calculated, most importantly, symmetrical. Not because he wants to look cool or be the best, but because if anything's out of place, it feels like his entire world is about to crumble down. He was born with purpose, son of death, heir to the system that's supposed to keep everything symmetrical. So he carries that weight like it's law. Like if he slips, the world slips with him. He's not just managing expectations, he's suffocating under them. The symmetry thing, that's not a quirk, although that is partially a character quirk that makes him memorable. That's the only way he knows how to keep the chaos at bay. If everything looks right, maybe he can believe that everything is right. Maybe he can believe he's not losing control, but perfection isn't peace, it's pressure. And underneath all the lines in order, Kid's just a teenager trying to prove he deserves to exist outside of his father's shadow. That he's more than a replacement, that he's not just a piece on someone else's chessboard. Because the scariest thing for someone like him is realizing that imperfection might be part of the point. These are all of the things each of the characters deal with while trying to defeat Medusa, and her minions, and eventually Medusa's sister Arachne, and prevent the resurrection of the Kishin. Which, by the way, Arachne and her little chainsaw minion, I'm on to you, Fujimoto. But what I love about Soul Eater is that each of the characters I listed are so strongly distinct from one another, and yet they are all connected by two things. One of which we will discuss as it pertains to the conclusion of the series, but the first has been laid out. The thing they all have in common. It's within each of them and all of us. I've avoided saying the word exactly, but I'm sure you know by now. Fear. Fear is the common thing all of these characters struggle with. One scared of not being enough, the other scared of being judged, scared of losing oneself to the impulsive thoughts and desires that will harm others, scared of losing order, scared of losing and being stagnant because then it confirms everything people said about you, or it confirms the negative things you believe about yourself. The fear of interacting and forming relationships with new people because the trauma of abandonment has crippled our ability to see anything but that outcome. We don't really realize sometimes that what holds us back is fear. What also drives us is fear. Those who procrastinate like myself don't always do so because of laziness, but rather because they are scared of a negative outcome. So it's easier if there's no outcome at all. Anger, despite being a popular emotion, is really a secondary emotion. Often the origin of someone's anger can be traced back to sadness or fear. I'm scared of this outcome, so in an outburst of anger, be it verbal or physical, I'm going to try and stop it. We get angry at things we do not understand. Sometimes a feeling of inferiority, or it makes us question what we know. Once again, some form of fear. For years I thought I was an angry person, but then I realized beneath all of that God-hating anger was a deeply anxious individual. The origin of this video even came from a place of fear that my previous Soul Eater video is going to be what some people think is all that I'm capable of. I resonate heavily with soul and holding back, because when you don't try your all, then you don't have to care what other people think about what you do or make, which is what I did with this channel for years. I'm scared to age my video poorly, but I think the word people like to use is nonchalant. But some people need to hear that you aren't nonchalant. You're being a loser. It's terrifying to try something new or take the risk of giving it your all. So instead we stay with what we are comfortable with, even if that sucks. I resonate with Black Star wanting to improve and hating the feeling of not getting better, because if I don't get better and better, then I'm replaceable. So while learning to be okay with going all out and caring more about the process than the results, there was another fear pushing that even more. I'm sure some of you might connect with deciding to be isolated and or avoid any honesty or vulnerability in any relationship of any kind, because then the real you, not the you that you're okay with people seeing, but that you, that real version of you, doesn't have to feel the pain of rejection or abandonment that you haven't healed from. So by being scared of having our worst insecurities confirmed in our minds, we avoid the situation completely. This in Soul Eater is intermingled and often amplified with what is known as madness. Madness. Shout out Macho Man Randy Savage, fuck Hulk Hogan. This segment should be easy because it is currently 4 in the morning. No, I lied, it's only 3 in the morning and I currently want to integrate my face into the monitor. The slip of one's sanity in the world of Soul Eater, the moments of horror in the series, are really underrated, but it has some great shots capturing what it feels like to lose oneself completely, being consumed by one's fears and giving into reckless abandon by the corrupting magic of chaos. I love this aspect of Soul Eater, because the souls represent and are an exaggerated form of that's why the style is so powerful, because the madness exists in every part of the world of Soul Eater. It's chaotic, whether it be the expressions or the ever-changing world. This isn't a clean, polished universe where everything makes sense. It's a world built around chaos, anxiety, and trying to find your center in the middle of all of that. And what makes that so powerful is that every character is on the same journey, just different paths. They are all trying to keep their soul steady while the world around them and even inside of them starts to crack. We all have madness deep down, but in the pursuit of what we want, will our fears take control and corrupt our very soul, and then kill it? The biggest tragedy is then revealed near the end of the manga, and that's the Kishin Asura is the firstborn of Lord Death. This is the important shit the anime just doesn't include. When a Shinigami is born, the previous dies, or at least that's the case with Death and his son. Excalibur, in the one scene where he's actually serious, asks Death if he's afraid of dying. Quote, "No, I've already given away my fear along with everything else. It seems that putting all of your fear into one fragment wasn't such a smart move. Fear and order. We tried to build order, the others and I, but fear and madness are two sides of the same coin. Perhaps this outcome was preordained. I have no right to speak ill of Medusa for using her own child as an experiment. This is all my fault, and yet all I can do is send Kid and his companions to deal with it." The Kishin, being the living embodiment of not just madness, but as the god of madness, wishes to spread it throughout the world the same way Death and his son Death the Kid wish to preserve order. All the while Maka and Soul reach out to Crona hoping to save him, who has now been consumed by the Kishin, but Crona chooses to amend for their sins and sacrifice themselves to help defeat the Kishin. The age-old question is asked when it comes to order and chaos. Should one exist without the other? Can one even exist without the other? The answer being no. Part of Death the Kid's growth as a character and him introducing a new order is by not focusing on just order, not seeing things with an obsession of symmetry, but of not seeing things through the viewpoint of balance. Symmetry simply being one side mirrored on the other, while balance means it can be different elements that are equally weighted. When giving into his madness of order, someone like Black Star couldn't exist because he stands out and ruins the symmetry. But in a world of balance, someone like Black Star is necessary. Asura views humanity as puppets, while Kid learns to embrace what humanity is and the freedom to choose and be themselves. As Death dies, he believes Kid will be just fine, fueled by his love and trust in humanity instead of his fears. Black Star surpassing even the gods. Soul plays the mad piano without losing sight of himself, and Maka realizes that she is indeed enough and needs not fear rejection because she can harmonize with others. That is the power of humanity, of the human soul and essence and self, that despite our fears, we are stronger together and capable of harmony. Sometimes our answers lie where our fears do. We can't give into it, but we also can't get rid of fear. So the only option we have left is to embrace it. To trust that our ability to love one another can beat out whatever fears we have. The birth of this channel was an overthinker having a fuck it moment. Serious, if you overthink a lot, a calculated fuck it or two can go a long way. Years later, despite the ups and downs, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. If you're scared of failure, try something new, and understand that you were better off trying than regretting never trying anything once. You have no time left. If pursuing your dream doesn't scare you, then maybe you need a better dream. If you were scared of forming bonds with others, be honest with the people close to you and see how you are loved far more than you could ever imagine. I'm trying to get better at exploring with curiosity instead of fear, viewing oneself as a world to be explored instead of always like a problem that needs to be solved. Soul Eater is a bold series in style, almost like Okubo chose to let go of whatever fears he had and made something he wanted to make. You might not always understand another person, they might not always understand you, but that's okay, because symmetry isn't the goal. Harmony is, and for that we don't have to be the same for two souls to resonate. Sometimes we take things for granted, our own self included.